Stellar is convinced that if she brings me every toy she can find, and even some that aren't her toys, that I will play. So she has a one-focused mind. I think right now she's actually playing with herself, entertaining herself. So you may have laughter when you watch this video or the meditation video, and how she tried so hard to break my concentration. In order to really begin to understand our anger, we have to start with some just basic building blocks, and to really define anger and to notice anger's effect on our relations with ourselves and others. And I'm going to be reading from How to Solve Our Anger Problem. And as we read these different passages, which I find very, very clear, we're going to establish the building blocks. What's the definition of anger? So anger is a deluded mind. So remember, inside we have in our mind, when we were studying our mind, understanding our mind is made up of different parts. Our mind is made up of different parts. And in our mind, there are some minds that are always present. The mind of, the mind of contact, for instance. When our mind is in contact with an object, that makes a moment of mind. And then there are parts of mind that enter in. Anger is one of the parts that enter in, and we label these parts whether they're beneficial or whether they're destructive. Anger is one of those parts of minds that when it comes into our awareness is a very destructive part. So it says anger is a deluded mind. So please listen to this definition, write it down if you can, because in the definition, it's a working definition. It is the actual process that anger arises. So anger is a deluded mind that focuses on an object. And then it goes ahead and says if the object is animate or inanimate. So it doesn't matter. Every object that we can imagine is animate or inanimate. So any object, this deluded mind, this non-helpful mind, anger, focuses on an object. And it feels, when anger mixes with our awareness, it feels whatever it is we're focusing on to be unattractive. Then it exaggerates. It exaggerates the unattractiveness. And at that point, those bad qualities that we're exaggerating on, the initial unattractiveness becomes almost disdain. And from there, the mind wishes to harm. So I'm going to read it so you can write it down. Anger is a deluded mind that focuses on animate or inanimate objects, feels it to be unattractive, exaggerates its bad qualities, and wishes to harm. Once again, anger is a deluded mind that focuses on animate or inanimate objects, feels them to be unattractive, exaggerates the bad qualities, and wishes to harm. So we have thousands of examples, and I would really like you to have a little notebook. And in your notebook, along with the definition of anger, it's very important for you to jot down, maybe at the end of the day or maybe the middle of the day, and jot down instances of anger arising in your mind. Some of them can be very slight, others may be very harsh. And so as you're noticing them, see if you can notice the different parts of the definition. So you'll notice your anger. So you have that deluded mind focusing on something. Maybe it's your partner. Maybe it's a phone call that you received. Maybe it's a phone call you received with the phone company and it's so difficult. Whatever it is, just notice. And notice how the mind, when it begins to recall these angry encounters, how the mind just will start to exaggerate. So it's a bad feeling, and then you start to exaggerate, ruminating basically on this encounter. Maybe you're telling other people about it, and it starts to get into a whole story about it. And then feel inside how you wish to harm. I'm going to cancel my phone company. I'm going to pack up and walk out. All these different decisions how you want to harm. And usually that harm, when we look at it, if you can look at it, is as harmful or more harmful to yourself as it is to the other, or that object. Because the object itself is not experiencing the difficulty. So it's not magic, yet understanding can be so freeing. There's freedom with our understanding. So please just see if you can fill up a few pages with these examples, because as we move on, we'll use these examples. You can use them to sort of do your homework with, and you can continue adding to them. I mean, anger arises quite frequently. It is one of the most common negative qualities of our mind. And then the next building block, once we establish a definition, a working definition, is to notice the destructive quality of our mind. This book goes as far to say that anger has no good qualities. We have to see in ourselves how we actually believe that anger must have some good qualities, because we spend so much time with it. Maybe it's because we have absolutely no awareness at all, and our mind is just swayed by whatever comes and goes, no stability. But if you have any stability at all, why do you get caught? Why are we so easily drawn to this destructive quality? And so if we really focus on the destructiveness, our mind is not going to be as easily swayed by our anger. So there's nothing more destructive than anger. Anger can ruin a relationship with another person. One encounter, that sort of irritating encounter, can color the relationship to such a degree that that person just is not interested in spending their time in relationship with us just because of that anger. I'm not saying that's good or bad, I'm just saying we need to notice. So there is nothing more destructive than anger. It destroys our peace and happiness in this life, and it impels us to engage in negative actions in future lives. So that is describing the laws of karma, the laws of cause and effect. So if we engage in angry minds now, it will affect our future. Of course it will. I'm going to use a Kleenex. Excuse me. Anger can prevent our spiritual progress, and it can prevent us from reaching our spiritual goals. The opponent to anger is patience. So those of you who have had this class before or been in this class in Madison or Stoughton, oh dear, or Columbus, you'll remember that the antidote to anger is patience. And that there are 3 types of patience, and we will be looking at all of those. Shanti Davis says that one moment of anger can destroy our positive minds, almost can destroy any virtue that we have. So we have these deluded minds and we have these virtuous minds, and our anger is so powerful that it can destroy and sort of impede all of our virtuous qualities. Similarly, if we generate anger towards those whom we have received great kindness, whether materially or spiritually, there will be no limit to that destruction. Anger harms us deeply. One of the most harmful effects of anger is that it robs us of our reason and our good sense. Wishing to retaliate against those whom we think have harmed, we expose ourselves to great personal danger merely to exact petty revenge. So it robs us. At a moment of anger, we are not thinking clearly. Our mind is tight, our face is red. Remember, one of the destructive qualities of anger is it makes us ugly. And we're not thinking clearly. Our mind is really geared toward how we can get back at another person. In close relationships, opportunities to get angry arise many times a day. So to prevent that buildup of bad feelings, we need to understand anger as soon as it arises. If we allow it to accumulate, it will become more and more difficult to deal with our anger. A relationship in which there's a lot of friction and conflict of interests also has unrivaled opportunities to erode away any of the positive relations. So it is very important for you to begin to notice how anger really robs you of your common sense, how anger makes you look ugly, how anger ruins your relations with those you love. And some of them you're unable to actually repair them. There's always that element of distrust. All right. Having understood or taking the time to understand the faults of anger, we need to watch our mind closely. As soon as you notice anger arising, it's much easier to deal with it when it's just mild agitation. But you need to immediately begin to recall how destructive it is, because that I'm so sorry, because that understanding will be what is necessary for you to move forward in actually dealing with our anger. One of the things that often comes up when we're thinking that anger has absolutely no good qualities, because we're convinced it does have some. And one of the things that I can sort of say is that anger has, as a quality, when it's arising, if we can notice it, that actually is a good quality. So noticing our anger. So anger itself brings an alert. Our body gets hot, tight, our face might flush, our breathing changes, everything. So once we notice our anger arising, we can begin, that itself is a good quality, because we know, if we understand anger, anger is arising. It's like, then once you get that detection, you're able then to be in charge of your mind instead of your angry mind in charge of you. So that is kind of one good quality. It signals us to take action. So there's a couple of other things that I wanted to read about anger. In reality, it says, most of our emotional problems are nothing more than a failure to accept things as they are. So when you're noting these times that you get angry, just understand, and maybe you can have two columns on this side, that we are, most of the times, our emotional problems that we feel, this angry problems, are nothing more than a failure to accept things as they are. So instead of trying to change the circumstance, which is what we do when we're angry, we have the energy then to just begin to just see what happened. Doesn't mean that we have to endorse it or like it, but we have to accept it. Our emotional upheaval is almost all the time a failure to accept. So we're just learning. Once you fully accept people or situations as they are without the slightest judgment, so that's tricky, or reservation, then there is no basis for a problem to exist. That's worth writing down. If you're able to accept things as they are, not because you like it, but just as it is, there is no place for judgment or criticism or a problem to exist. I think I'm going to have to end. I'm having a hard time. And so I'll just read this last thing. The point of this first teaching, besides a lot of coughing and sneezing, is to learn the definition, to begin writing down situations, using the definition to sort of see how your mind moved, and then noting the faults of anger. How did anger have a negative or a destructive quality toward your relationships and the mind itself? It destroys our peace. It destroys our happiness. We need to note these things. So here's last. For as long as we are in conflict with life's difficulties, the inability to accept things as they are, thinking that things should be different from the way they are, blaming circumstances or other people for our unhappiness, we shall never have the clarity or spaciousness of mind to see what it is that is really binding us. If we are unable to begin to accept, first of all, to see anger in all its ugly faces, and then to see that it's an inability to accept, we will never have peace and stability. So that's all I want to say in this first class. It's interesting because now I feel my coughing has subsided. We will move on. Next week we'll have another class. I'm able to get to the library today. I hear we're going to have 2 more storms this coming week, so we'll see what happens. So with all good intention, we'll stop here. We dedicate all that we have done for others. Take to heart this series. Increase your sitting practice. And please, please, get a notebook and begin noting how anger arises in your life. Thank you very much. We dedicate all that we have done for others. May others also have the opportunity to train, to gain clarity, to gain awareness. Thank you.